Welcome to SporeSwaps podcast, episode 11. I'm Control Chaos. I'm your host, and I'm here with Mr. Mycelium. How you doing, Mr. Mycelium?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Really excited for Mr. Mycelium to be here today. He's one of the SporeSwaps top dogs, and we're going to talk a little bit about who he is and where he comes from and his business and what it's like managing the largest genetic library of cubensis in the world. So, why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your history and where you come from?
So I actually started this about 5 years ago, and it was actually um, a hobby um, gone obsession, and then I just started vending. I started vending on my own on Reddit, and then I was on eBay, Mercari, and Etsy, which I'm banned for life on all those. Um, but I started with sports syringes, and honestly, I just 24/7 mycology. It was either I was eating or sleeping or I was mycology, and that was for years. And then I started getting networked in with some really good people that had been around already, and they showed me things. And because I had a lot of failures when I started, and that's one thing that everybody beats themselves up about is like if a contamination or a bag goes bad or um, something like that, that they beat themselves up or they just give up. But in reality, it took me 6 months of failures before I actually got my conditions down to where they need to be. And then it was from once I understood where I was making my mistakes, that's when I started to be able to build into like some really really nice grows. But it was all because of the people that shared what they shared with me, especially on like Reddit and um, Discord, stuff like that. And I traded with very honest people, and I got very fortunate that everybody that I met was honest. And to this day, I'm still friends with a lot of those guys that I met when I first started, and a lot of them are SporeSwaps customers actually. I've learned a lot about SporeSwap customer or people from SporeSwaps that um, was like maybe a bad syringe or something, whatever it might be. Um, Literally, those customers have been like to this day like my best customers from early on.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, Reddit's got a really strong community in regards to the whole mycology thing and growing, and I find a lot of information that I'm looking for
Yeah.
on Reddit forums. So there is a lot of good information there for sure. But well, take me back to when you were talking about the beginning, and well, so here's how I want to frame this. You're a huge success now, but talk to me more about when you were failing, because I know that a lot of people who tune into us are newer people, right? Um, and understanding like the reason why is huge. And you kind of had mentioned getting your conditions to where they needed to be. And I think that a lot of newer people kind of miss that part. Is that like if you're operating in a different portion of the country than the person who you're receiving the information from,
Mhm.
those conditions need to be altered a little bit based off of heat and humidity and altitude and all these other things that could actually affect your growing environment. That might not be a problem for the person who you got the information from, right? So,
Absolutely.
it's I think that piece gets lost a little bit sometimes, is that it's not going to be exactly the same everywhere all the time. You do have to kind of tweak things to make it
Mhm.
work for you and what you're working with. So, can you talk about where were your failures and how did you work through them?
So most of my issues came from I actually had the most troubles in shoeboxes. So
Okay.
I learned that my conditions in the shoeboxes was not uh, was not ideal. I tried to do a lot of Martha Tent techs with cubensis, and I had a lot of like let's say had a good bit of contamination issues, but it was hidden contamination. So
Okay.
My failures actually, like, for the longest time, were from bacillus, were from wet rot, were from when you're putting a spawn to substrate, and then you're like, well, why isn't the substrate turning white? It's supposed to turn white whenever you go and check it after like a week or two, and come to find out it's bacillus. You can't see it. So a lot of the bacteria is out there, we can't see necessarily, or even smell. It might not even smell, but a lot of my issues were actually from the cultures I was working with. It was a lot of the spores, because spores are dirty in nature. They're actually not. I mean, when they come from a lab and they come from a swab, they can be clean, but like dirty in nature. Like, as far as like, the reason why I sell the liquid cultures is because it is a clean, much cleaner version, and it is predetermined genetics rather than a multi-spore syringe, which is multi-genet, like, which is basically a basket of genetics all in one. And once those spores meet up, that's what then they become that's when they become genetics. But I was doing a lot of MSS, and I was having a lot of issues because the genetics that I was working with were weak, or because I was just inoculating spores and holding my breath. Sometimes it was like I was getting great success then, and then I was like, oh, I'm still having issues. But I didn't understand until one of my one of my people that got me into mycology, a friend of mine, uh, actually showed me liquid culture. And once you showed me liquid culture, it was like a whole nother ball game. Basically, I was like, wow. So these things can stay clean, under the liquid. The cultures can grow, and they can. I've seen liquid culture jars go for 3 years and stay healthy. So I guess the liquid culture was kind of my holy grail for success early on, was because it stays cleaner, and it doesn't, and it's predetermined good genetics. When you're working with good genetics, versus those spore syringes, like, especially like a random golden teacher spore syringe. That's what it was the predetermined strong genetics in the liquid cultures. That was
Yeah.
the key for me.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think that for people who are like more like, so in regards to, there's like two sides of what you do, right? You have to
Hmm.
maintain a business where customers have expectations in regards to a specific genetic variant, right? And what that
Yes,
expression is supposed to look like. And you can stabilize that expression a lot more than using multi-spore or spores, swabs, or whatever the case may be. But then there's, you know, in that's to support your business, but then in your free time, or someone like myself, who, when you're spending lab time in the lab doing things for yourself, I personally work from spore as much as I possibly can because I'm chasing new expressions, and that multi,
absolutely.
like you said,
Yeah,
that multi spore is that basket of genetics. So
yeah,
um,
yeah,
there's a lot more of a possibility of you getting a different expression from what the liquid
yeah,
culture
yeah,
that might be. um, but then on the opposite end of that, as for customers and or new people, um, if you're looking for a very specific genetic with a very specific look, liquid culture is definitely the way to go. But then people don't understand that disconnect where if you buy an MSS of a spore dropping variant, that it could end up with all different types of expressions because it's
yep,
multi-spore. So
absolutely.
that's a good call
Yep.
out for sure.
And I want to make sure that also that I say that I'm not putting down multi-spore syringes at all, because that there is the key. Like, is an important part of each generation too. Like, whenever we go to the next generation with a culture, we couldn't go to the next generation without going back to the spore. So, like, spore swabs, for me, I am a huge fan of spore swabs because it allows, I think they're underrated, because it's a really easy way to save your genetics, to keep them, to take a sample, put it away in a sterile package, and literally come back to it in like 2 years, 3 years. And but sport, like, that's the one thing also is I try to explain to people is you can't just take a liquid culture and then expect that it will always be Even though it could be a mono, I've seen them literally change like one syringe. I've seen a person do like 3 grows with the same syringe of Jack Frost, and it literally had 3 different phenos for 3 different tubs that he did. And
Yep.
I do see crazy things like that. So it's still a basket of genetics in a way, like just a smaller basket, I guess, if that makes sense. That's the
Yeah, for
way
sure.
I look at it.
Well, it's funny that you say that because all the different details that you just brought up. Because I actually wanted to show you something that I took out just today. So I have a giant like plastic filing folder,
Yes,
uh,
yes, perfect.
and it's like protected. It can get locked and all that other stuff, but it's a giant file folder, and in the file folder, I keep folders like this.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
the Mr. Mycelium folder.
yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
And so when we were first starting going back and forth, like when we both first joined SporeSwaps, and we were sending stuff back and forth, you sent me a bunch of swabs, and these are from like you kind of just noted like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of like pick your brain about like maybe this will kind of like bring your mind back to the things you used to be doing. But so this is B minus land anemones, wavy
Yeah, yeah,
fruits
anemone.
from an
Yep.
120 gram. Check that out.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That was awesome. That was a very weird mutation that looked like it had only gills, it had no stem, and it produced literally consecutively like 5 or 6 tubs over a span of like 3 months that it was producing some very bizarre fruits. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but B minus, I thought it was Mad Hatter, but actually so Mad Hatter is an isolation of B minus. So B minus is albino B plus. Am I correct with that?
I
Albino B
think so.
plus.
Mm.
That has got some really funky fruits, and a lot of people don't order uh, the B minus as much as I think they would. But B minus, there were some phenos in there that were bizarre. It's almost like things that you would see with like the Dwarf King and with Ko Samui or Albino Ko Samui, where you get these squatty fruits, but there's no stems with most of the genetics with the B minus. There was no stems, and there were beautiful gills, but the fruits got like 150 grams and
Mhm.
or 212 grams was the biggest one, and that was pretty impressive for a non-ape, and just like an albino, I call it a land race, but an albino, uh, like an OG genetic, basically, of an albino. I was pretty impressed with that. It was a good one, man.
Yeah, I've had a couple of uh, tubs in my time growing that put out those anemone,
Yeah, like sea sponges.
yeah. So just the cap, no stipe at all. But then when I grew, not this one, but your other B minus,
Hmm.
they were super stumpy stipes and had caps that just would get like this wide, like
Yeah, yeah,
almost like no stipe at all, but then this cap that just started like spanning across
exactly, exactly.
big,
Yep.
yeah. And they were all super heavy, yeah.
Mine
Super
preferred
cool.
the sides of the tubs, which I try to manipulate it as much as possible with the fruiting conditions, by having it more humid, because when I see fruits on the sides, then that to me usually means they're trying to get more moisture. Essentially, that's usually what I take from it whenever I see that. But there was it preferred these sides, and it would literally start like small, pretty small fruits, and then before I know it, you walk back in the room and it's like they're massive. So,
Yeah,
so that was
yeah.
a really good one.
How about this one? So I got a leucistic Maui platinum wavy cap.
Yeah.
Girl.
Yeah, I had this the Maui Platinum, also known as from the Pacific Sporica Company, Pez Exotica
Okay.
Sport. Yep. At the Hawaiian, it's the Hawaiian genetic that's not native to Hawaii, but they had that. Actually, that sample there, it looked like wavy caps. Like it didn't even look like a cube. And I had people online that were like, I posted on Reddit, and they're like, that doesn't look like a cube. And I was like, it's a cube. So I named it wavy caps. And when I named these little like those little notes and stuff on swabs or whatever it might, usually just for the swabs and for spores, it's to also help refresh, like, to be able to say, oh, well, this is what because there's so many traits, just like a dog breed or a cat breed. There's like, they each have their traits, their differences, and there's certain things that I remember that literally each genetic has like little characteristics about them that pop up, and certain things pop in my mind whenever. So I just kind of make that note, and it helps kind of rejuvenate. Like, oh yeah, that's about the phenotype and everything.
Yeah, I do the same thing, especially with like swabs and prints. Well, yeah, swabs and prints. But so like I'm working with this tidal wave Jack Frost, and then it's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Title
you'll have
frost.
you'll have like notes on each where it's like tidal wave Jack Frost number 3 F2, and then it'll be like
Mm-hmm.
darker dimple caps or
Mm-hmm.
pointy wavy caps, you know what I mean, like, and
Yep.
stuff like that. Kind of as you're running through generations helps you kind of remember the actual fruit that you took the swab from, you know what I mean, more than just maybe like the very specific overall characteristic of the box
Yeah,
itself, but that particular fruit, you know what I mean.
yeah,
So very cool. Yeah, you have a lot of leucistic stuff in here. It seems like you used
yeah.
to really like running leucistic.
I was chasing
But
albino. That's where I found all the albino genetics. Was the leucistic genetics.
yeah,
Typically, um, I have some secrets I can share as far as how I was able to isolate so many albinos on my own. And one
please.
thing I can say is fruiting your plates.
Okay.
Fruiting your plates out, and then cloning like 10 times over. Just keep cloning and cloning. And you can take spore samples from fruits that grow on plates. If they grow large enough, which most of them do for me, they even grow on. I prefer charcoal agar,
Okay.
activated charcoal,
Okay.
LME, and fruits. They literally will be almost full size. You can take a sample, and it's going to be clean, because as long as that, especially in a sterilite cup, it's sealed. It's one of the best ways to preserve your agar too, is to have it in sterilite cups. And hunting the albinos on a plate or in a cup, you can literally look at that agar plate like it's a pinwheel. Like, you can see where the fruits might be more dense in one area, might be lighter in one area. So I would chase the lightest fruit every single time but I would do like 4 transfers, and I'd do basically start almost like a tree, like where you kind of branch off. You start with this one, number 1, and then you have number 4 over here. And basically, there's no guarantee you're going to find an albino whatsoever, but the best chances is going to be with doing multiple plates, because the more you have, the more likely you might get lucky. It's almost like a lucky slash environmental, um, but mostly it's in the genetics. That's I don't know what you think about that, but that's the way I've always understood. Pheno hunting albinos is that leucistic is always the going to be like the best place to find them.
Yeah, no, for sure. And also what you said about running and cloning over and over again, because like if you run it, just historically, time tells us that if you run something over and over and over again, it's only like a matter of time and ratio that
Yeah.
you're gonna
Yeah.
finally pull albino out of it, or have that single albino fruit
Yeah.
that pops up, and then you start cloning that one. So definitely, yeah. And I was actually just talking to Dr. Ed, like when we were off camera after after we ended our podcast, we continued to talk, and I was telling him that, and you pretty much turned me on to this without ever actually like saying it with your words, just through the trades that we were doing and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the sterilite cups, the K
Yeah.
cups, they honestly, like, I was having this back in April. I was having this issue where I just kept I was getting orders where customers were doing deep dives on my library and ordering things that people hadn't
Yeah.
ordered for a very long time. And I kept
Hmm.
coming up with this problem where if somebody did that deep dive on my inventory, I would go back to the master that was just being kept on a plate and it would be have gone bad. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I wouldn't have, and it wasn't old to the point where it should have gone bad that quickly. And I was like, man, I really need to like do something that's going to help with the longevity of my samples of my masters. And I noticed that the K cups that I was keeping for an extended period of time that I was getting from you just seemed to have like much higher of a shelf life than just running them on. And what
Yeah.
Dr. Ed was talking about was that like it I feel it's because you're giving the mycelium essentially like a biodome, right?
Yeah.
You
Yes.
don't
Yes.
and if you don't open it, there's, like, more
Hmm.
space for oxygen within it, and that carbon dioxide oxygen, like, balance is almost, like, higher because there's more space for it all to move in, right?
Yep.
And I found, like, for masters that were sitting on regular plates, they would be like 3, 4 months and need a transfer, and then with
Yeah.
K cups, it's like you can let them go
Yeah.
like a year and take a transfer off of them, and they're
I was going to
fine.
show you this. Look at this. This is Choco Mac from 7/20/23,
Okay.
and it literally is just like it's like it looked like it got done like maybe a month ago, but and
Mhm.
it's literally from a year ago. Um, it's like it creates it's sealed up. And one interesting thing that actually I do also, this is exactly the same thing what we're talking about on a bigger scale, is that I have fridges filled with slants, because I back my genetics up like religiously, like three different ways: slants, LC, and then I do agar, or I do microcentrifuges and
Mhm.
agar plates, or cups. But dude, I have fridges that I don't open. I keep
Yeah.
them sealed, completely sealed, and I keep them at a low 40-degree temperature. I keep them sealed unless I have to absolutely go deep dive and look for a genetic or something like a clone from a year ago. But I actually go months without opening the fridges the same way. Just is like another layer of trying to trap that, like you're saying, basically like create a vacuum.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm super thankful for it, and it was a process, man. I mean, because I don't have anywhere close to the library that you do, but, even doing just 200 varieties,
Hmm.
transfers onto
A
from
lot.
your
Yeah, it's a lot.
plates to K cups, like, it was a
Yeah.
process. It took
Yeah.
several weeks because, I mean, you can't just sit there and do it all at once, and then it's not
Yeah.
like I was just sitting there chucking the plates that they came from. I was, like, resealing each
Yeah.
plate. I kept all
Yep.
them too, and you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, man. Definitely. It's definitely an ongoing process. Like I am always having to work cultures, clean cultures, transfer. It's like once I get a culture clean, I back it up three ways. I literally just I used to make backups, but then it got just a little out of hand, because then I have a library of over 700. So you don't want 1,400 jars. So I stopped making backup jars, but I made it where I was doing backup syringes, um, and I basically backing them up multiple ways also allows me, in case one thing had a issue, I'll have two more fail safes, and I actually do it in 6-month intervals. So I back everything up every 6 months. I bring it back to Spore if possible, and then that way it allows me to also like check after myself.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, maintenance is constant. It's literally every day. It's they're like animals. Like to me, like they constantly need food. They constantly need nutrients. And if you neglect them, they can perish basically. So that's why I've got constantly have to do maintenance basically.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's that's pretty so that's your inventory, right? I know for myself and just having what I have, the process that I use. So like in regards to fulfilling orders, and so I'm very much into efficiency. I like to spend as little time and incorporate it and incorporate as many steps into one piece of a process as I can. So like to manage customer orders with a 700 genetic inventory, right?
Yes.
For mine, okay. So for mine,
Handwrite it all.
this even when I tell people this about like my like 200 or whatever the hell it is,
Yeah,
um, I keep it in alphabetical order. The
I
only
do
way that
too. Yeah.
the only way for me to keep track of it is dividing it essentially into shelves that are grouped into letters of like A through D, D through blah blah blah, and on and so forth. Or I would never be able to find anything, and I don't want to spend tons of time looking for the sample that I need to make. Like I want to
Hmm.
just be able to go to it, find it, and make it, and like have it not be a huge process. Until I put everything in alphabetical order, it was like I would spend like 10 minutes digging for one variant. Now it's like I just go to the shelf where it is in terms of that letter grouping, and it makes it that much easier. So that's the process you use
Yep.
too.
Yep.
And it's
So for me, I use the iPhone notes. You know,
okay.
the notes in the iPhone, I make it where you can check the check mark. You can check them off, and I'll make a note like of like generations or F this, F that, and um, basically I'll make a note if do I have the spores. I just all compacted, but it's all my iPhone notes, and it's cool that there's other guys that are constantly very close friends that have been working with me for years that they're working on or growing genetics out and of mine that we're basically they're helping me because it's so many. It's like they're basically got guys that are just working with them and trying to pheno hunt, just doing other just all kinds of stuff, kind of working as a team. And they literally have like you can set your iPhone where it's you can share your notes with other mycologists basically, and they can see you actively like adding and subtracting what you have actively in your library, like what you do at real time on your phone. They can see it. So they can get in there and they can see, oh well, he's got this and that, and it's pretty cool, the technology and Excel. Salo Simon, my good friend of mine, he uses Excel for monitoring his stuff and organizing it, and he's got an incredible library
Yeah.
um, that he's done really well with, like Excel. So Excel might work for some people also.
Yeah, I used to have an Excel spreadsheet, and I don't know, like it was just like one more thing to maintain.
Yeah,
And
I'm not an
um
Excel fan either, man.
but like so I mean for with SporeSwaps vendors like ourselves, I mean,
Hmm.
you use our back end inventory programs the way that they the capabilities they do have.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, that's my Excel spreadsheet now because
That's great. That's great. Yeah, that's a very accurate way to do it. Yep.
yeah, I mean, like I do bundle packages and stuff like that that will make it so that like a particular swab set doesn't depreciate from the inventory.
That's
So like
awesome.
once a month, I'll go through and I'll recount up all of my swabs and then re-put it in the correct quantities so that it's
Hmm.
just creating for my inventory at all times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because I found that if you sell bundles, right, and then you have it set to manage your inventory, like
Hmm.
it won't depreciate that particular value, and then when you get to 0, you'll actually not have any left when you get to that final sale, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. And just an email and everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All
Yeah.
the all the baloney, so, yeah, good
But
stuff.
but yeah, that's a great way to like to for your store. That way you're always accurate. You never have to tell anybody. The worst thing as a vendor that ever want to have to tell someone is, hey man, especially somebody that's really stoked, excited for a product that they buy. They're like, you're probably telling all their buddies, and then you send them somebody sends them an email and says, hey, I don't have this in stock right now, and that crushes. That's the worst because I've been on the other end of that like years ago. um, because usually whenever you see something you really want, as far as the genetic goes, like I used to be like just ecstatic. I used to be waiting by the mailbox.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but that's a great way to prevent that from happening for sure.
Well, I will say that, it does happen time to time, and we have some really cool customers, like, as in,
Oh, definitely, for sure.
I think we have, like, maybe, like, a 1 in 100 ratio of assholes to nice people. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
like, I I would say that most times, like, if I am out of something, or, like, maybe I went to retrieve an old sample that went bad and I don't feel comfortable serving that to a customer, whatever the case may be, um, that, I'll send them an incredibly apologetic email like, "Oh,
Yeah.
pick anything you want, I'll send you freebies," and
Mhm.
I'm expecting them to, like, get back to me and be angry or something, then, they'll get back to me and be like, "You know what? Send me whatever you feel like, because I trust your judgment. You're awesome, thank you." You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
And I'd like
like,
to say a thank you to all the customers that when they buy like 20 bundles or like the big large orders, and they say if you don't have these, feel free to replace it with, and then they give me a couple like extra options, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's been times where I was like, dude, that guy is awesome. Whoever just said that, 'cause it
yeah,
does help. It does help, especially in a library this big. Sometimes I might have a lot of, of a certain like natalensis genetic, and then not so much of this genetic. And whenever they give me those options, I'm gonna, you know, definitely take the best option that works for me also. So I just want to say thank you to the people that give us extra options.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So, let me ask you this, when you started cultivating, and building your library, like, was it always an intent for you to try to build the biggest library? Was that like a from the gate goal, or is that something that just kind of, like, snowballed with your obsession?
It's kind of snowballed. It snowballed when I met Mushroom Empire, who's also a vendor now. I actually brought him over because we were like best friends on Reddit, and he definitely kicked the doors open on quite a few unique, at the time impossible to find, genetics. So he's got really good genetics too as a vendor. But I collaborated with him, and I literally doubled my library overnight. I'm not gonna lie. Like I went from 140 cultures to 280 cultures in a month because we were just trading, and he was so thrilled too. We just traded like crazy, and all of the genetics I got from him are awesome, and I still use those like to this day. But yeah, like those are the type of people, like my success definitely comes from individuals like him and Silas Simon, just like really good people that have large libraries that we just do
Mhm.
very large trades sometimes, and it's not at once. It's over, it might be over a year.
Yep.
Maybe it could be 10 genetics, 10 genetics, 10 genetics, but then when you also are trading with another guy, that's 10 genetics. And so it stacks up. It stacks up fast. And then you have to run them all, which is its own process of verifying the fruits and, um, basically making sure everything's clean. And because even though that there's this many genetics, if they weren't like really good genetics, or if they're like not like, I will not willingly know, or I will not, if I willingly know something is not, if it's under par, I will definitely not offer it in my library, because it's not about how many genetics, it's about the quality of them, really. And there's a lot of quality out there, but it definitely takes time to to make sure to run every one of 700 plus genetics. It took me years, honestly, and I actually have about another 120 products I plan on releasing that I've been working on since October of last year. So we're still working on those.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
more to come.
oh, I'm sure. It's an extensive process, and,
Yeah.
you know, vendors at times will do, like, drops of, double digit variants at the same
Yep.
time, and
Yep.
the reason being, and what people don't really see on the back end, is that
Hmm.
sometimes, like, as a vendor who does have high volume, like, you're working so hard to fulfill orders, um,
Yes.
it
Yep.
leaves very little time for your own personal projects, which your
Mhm.
personal projects are still making product for customers, but they're
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
project because they're the back end genetics you're still working through. Um, but no, the call out about, having trusted sources and people who are really talented at sourcing and then also growing them out
Mhm.
and able to offer them to other people. It's huge. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
relationship that you and I have developed. You know, and there's high value on that. And then also, like, I mean, it's cool to hear even like back history of how like um other vendors within our network supported each other's beginnings, you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
And still to this day, like, we all continue
yeah,
to support each other and our own businesses, and, like, I'll put it to this, we're on we're in the same competitor space, right? But
mhm.
I've never once looked at, like, somebody
No,
like yourself or any of our other vendors really as, like, my direct competition, like, that's not really how I see you guys, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely, absolutely.
we're, like, we're very supportive of each other, like,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
all of us inclusively, and I think that's really, like, a special thing,
yeah, definitely, definitely.
'cause
It's
it's
like a
not.
bond. We're a team essentially. SporeSwaps is a team. It's a team effort. So,
Yeah, yeah,
and and as far as like credits and like that's my isolation or that's my way I look at it is I really think that without SporeSwaps there wouldn't be the opportunity for people to have the genetics that that we're basically are blessed to work with. Like I think that everybody should have the opportunity to grow or purchase or to have any genetic they want. And there's not a lot. There's unless you're tied into a like really in the network and know people and just in the scene basically or behind the scenes. And then like there's not always that opportunity. So Spore Swaps, allows people like me and yourself that to give the opportunity to those people that we happen to be blessed with the genetics that we have and we just want everybody out there. I hear people like they bash sport swaps. They're saying that we just want the money, we're just doing this for the money, and and it's like what, literally we are just providing everybody the opportunity that we have
Yeah,
because without sharing or and without helping each other there's other people. I look at mycology as medicine because it saved my life and I know it can save other people's lives too. So that's the biggest thing is um, it is such a I mean it's not medicine. uh, Let me make that disclaimer, but it is to me ancient medicine essentially. It's sacred, it's like spiritual.
yeah,
um, and yeah, so I think it helps people to a degree, big time.
absolutely. You had mentioned in a previous conversation of ours that, like, you had a pretty life-changing experience that kind of, like, how you ended up here to begin with, so you wanna talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. I took an astronomical dose. Back. This is I think almost going on like 5 years, and I basically had the highest dose probably ever. Like I couldn't find anything on the internet. It was over 30. It was over 32 and a half grams of dry, and I went in with uh, alcohol addiction really controlling my life. And let me say, when I came out of that experience, to this day, I don't even drink. I don't drink. I don't smoke cigarettes. I literally was like spare. I literally feel like a so much healthier of a human being. Um, I learned a lot of lessons that I feel like that it's like ancient wisdom that was passed over me, and it's like a lot of shackles in my life get broken. But when I was in that on that journey, I spoke to God. I spoke to my God, and He said, "Feed my people," and I didn't know what that meant. I quit my job the next day. I didn't, and before I know it, it's like all these. all these people on at Reddit at the time. It's just like the networking just came out of nowhere. We had 3,000, 4,000 members. It was like it was unexplainable. But literally, it's like before you know it, you have 500, 600 genetics, and it was just like it was meant to be. And I feel like it was my calling. And then that's when I was at about 50, actually more like 100 genetics, I realized, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to provide other people what I've been provided. So
Yeah,
that's my story on that.
that is really cool. More and more I do hear about people, and like so like I don't think with yourself there was even any real like intent. It doesn't sound like there was intent behind like almost like, oh, let's call it like in your own brain. I don't know that there was the idea that you were going to do break all these shackles that night with
Mm-hmm.
that day. You know what I mean? You were
I
probably
went
just
and drank a beer.
yeah, you were probably just living
Yeah.
and just took that over the course of several hours
Yeah, dude. Yeah, yeah.
and then came out the other side a different person. But a lot
Yeah.
of people do seem to kind of uh it's seems to be more of a common theme that people get into this trying to kick something, trying to kick addiction, trying
Yeah,
to kick
yeah.
depression, kind of trying to kick whatever the negative thing is in their life. And yeah, I love hearing stuff like that. But
Yeah,
it's
man.
also like one of those things where, um, for myself, like I got out of one of the most dark times in my life through microdosing. It wasn't like
That's
the
awesome.
heroic dose type situation,
Yep.
um, but it changed my way of thinking, and I feel like for forever. And
That's awesome.
the biggest thing that I took from it was gratitude, and I find that like the more I live in a state of gratitude for the things I do have, the less I complain about the things that I don't. You know what I mean?
That's
Um,
great. Yeah.
so big lessons there for sure. No, and that's a cool story in regards to yourself. It's amazing where it took you in regards to your own personal growth, and then
Yeah.
obviously the growth of your business. So yeah, that's awesome. Um, all right, so what's next for Mr. Mycelium? Like as in, how long do you think that you can maintain the library, do the volume that you're doing? Um, and so
Yep.
like and when I say like what's next, like expansion, like taking on staff. I mean, like at some point, don't you
Yeah,
need help?
I actually already have staff. I've got one Myco basically. Yeah. We yes, I actually have one person helping me pretty much let's see, doubling the library, like basically backing the library up. If all of a sudden my lab caught on fire, God forbid, knock on wood, but all of a sudden, or whatever catastrophic event, a tree falling on the house, or whatever it might be, it's the library's backed up. It's like there's a fail safe for the fail safe for the fail safe.
Yeah,
And I have it even in I've got stuff in fridges is backed up. I lost a few genetics a few years ago, and I was like, I don't ever want this to happen again. And since then, I make sure that I back everything up. But as far as the future goes, I do have 120, um, possibly more genetics. I've been working on for over a year. That I've just with the order volume, it's been very hard for me to do anything other than orders a lot of times. So I basically have put that on, like I work on that whenever I can, but I still have I'm a family man, and it's like I learned that sometimes I get overzealous. I'll set a goal of like I'm gonna say unrealistic expectations, but I'll push myself to the brink of like I'll beat myself up mentally if I don't get something done. Like that's how I am, and I really want to eventually hit 1,000, but I'm not going to push myself. I didn't plan on getting 700 even. I was going to
yeah,
stop at 500, but I think the future's um, to finish out what I've started essentially. It'll never be finished. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Not at the rate that people are putting out new
No,
variants.
and there's some really good stuff coming out, like, I mean, legitimately.
Mhm. Well,
Definitely.
your job is far from over. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I looked this morning before we got on, and on your page on SporeSwaps, and I know you also have other avenues. So it's almost like a snapshot in time, not even all of what you do, but you're
Mhm.
sitting at 10,209 sales
Yeah.
page. And then for customer perspective, you got to remember that's not typically a one item order.
No, no, it could be 5 or 20.
Yeah. So that's
I've done
probably
30,000 syringes. I tallied up to 30,000 was the rough approximate number. And I was like, if I just had 1 cent for every single order, man. Just kidding. Yeah, but I'm very thankful for my customers, especially people that are returning customers. And I try to, when I see somebody's name that's a returning customer, I see them on a frequent basis. I start trying to like, I definitely give all. I'm a freebie man. I feel like some of my success was for me just always making sure I like a freebie is like a bone. It's like a surprise. You don't know what you're gonna get, and um, I've had people tell me like, man, I literally just ordered just so I can get like, it's like a Jack in the Box, So but I actually religiously always make sure that there's bonus like freebies with every order. But the more I see somebody's name, I'll be like, hey man, do you want some free cups or some free plates? I've got stuff laying around, and I do give we do giveaways and stuff like that. So, but customer appreciation is very big with
yeah.
me.
And you've definitely had like a word of mouth business more than anything. Like, people
Yeah,
talk, and also that tie in about the freebies is huge because I do the same thing. So like you have two
yeah,
vendors, right? They both send you, like, let's say you were to order from two vendors and they both send you what you ordered, and it came out the exact same way, perfect, looks great, all that other stuff, but one sent you a freebie and the other didn't. Who do you think
exactly. Yep,
they're going to go back to?
yep,
and
yep.
and remember, is the person who gave them something for free, because everybody loves free. uh,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yep. And hook 'em I
but
usually try to slide in a genetic that, like, not a lot of people know of, but, like, at the time, and then everybody starts growing, like, "What is this thing?" Like, back when, like, SB10 and, a lot of Dirty South genetics, you get these newer guys that no experience, or it's their first grow, they're learning, and then all of a sudden, they got their golden teachers or their B+, plus, and then they have Dirty South's Buddha cut, and they're like, "What is this?" It's just like, and
yeah,
it's like the fire gets lit in them too. They're like, whoa, like it opens an entire another avenue of mycology because it's kind of out of the mainstream, like it's becoming mainstream now thanks to LC, like literally LC has kind of branched the gap uh between your penis envy, your non-spore dropping genetics, and your spore dropping genetics, because the old way was you had to use agar. Pretty much you had to work on agar only, but LC has bridged that gap so the newer mycologists can work with penis envy uncut or penis albino penis envy, um, which is pretty unique to see how the mainstream mycology is slowly changing, and it's still changing with the PNAT crosses and how those are coming along actually really well. Actually, I think you said that the Melmac TP times PNAT you mentioned, that is a very beautiful genetic
yeah,
that
yeah.
I'm working with.
I've seen some nice pictures from stuff that customers sent me from the GC, the ghetto cross swabs that I sent out. But
Yeah, yeah,
where yours came from, I have no idea. So somebody had obviously the same thought as me, because I doubt
yeah.
that it's passed from that person who got it from me.
That's the cool thing too. It's like we're passing them around, and like they're going through generations. Like they've got all kinds of micro evolutions with these cultures, and it's like I'm seeing them even evolve. I don't want to say domesticate, but like they, just kind of. I feel like we could see, like you had mentioned, we spoke yesterday about the how like the exotics are now becoming more of a available like indoor. There's all kinds of techs that are still coming out. I think that we're going to see all kinds of exotics and genetics that we didn't think was possible to work with indoors. Possible. It's just like mycology is ever growing. It never stops, and it's like as a vendor, I feel like I can get behind if I'm not plugged in to like the genetics, what's going on, and everything. It's easy to fall behind. So a lot of times I look at other vendors and see what they're doing and what they're working on, and it's cool to see how everything is evolving. You know, I might work on something and then send it to you, and you might work on it and then send it to him. Before you know it, it's like it's becoming a really polished like genetic, a really nice genetic that. And from where it started from, it might have been okay, but has potential. Um, but it's cool to watch things evolve, and before you know it, you accidentally give a free cup to somebody of a project, and before you know it, everybody on like or you see other vendors selling it and you're like, wait a second, I didn't that like it got leaked out or whatever. So it's
Yeah.
cool to see that.
Yeah, and it's crazy how even just like you said, because of the exchange rate, and so many people passing these things along and moving through generations, um, like I can cite a specific a variant. Like I remember specifically messaging psilocybin and saying to him like, bro, like the Lucidic swamp ghost that you have is so completely different than mine, and like
Yeah.
I want the one that he has, and it's like
Yeah.
I ran it, from I think it was from Swab, and the expression that I got was very cool,
Hmm.
and still like had that darkened center of the cap and stuff like that, but like it wasn't the Lucidic swamp ghost I wanted. Like it's not
Yeah.
I want that
Yeah.
expression, the one that he has, you know what I mean? And so like,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, I already have it. I want the one that he has. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. Yep.
So,
Starry Night is the number one. The Starry Night is the number one expected genetic where everybody's like, I want that, especially your newer mycologists. And even with Starry Night, I've seen it where it's been. I mean, it's a nice genetic, it's beautiful. But it's there's sometimes like for me, I worked with Starry, and it was like, man, it is way slower than like. I was expecting it to be a strong genetic, and it was like super slow, very beautiful fruits. First flush had a lot of like aborts. Um, the caps were really pretty though, and it was very potent fruits, but I was not. It's not what I envisioned, and it's still to this day. I feel like a lot of people they'll work with certain genetics thinking that it's going to be something that actually it's a little bit different, especially with tidal wave. Tidal wave is one people think it's more of a penis envy, and it's tidal wave drops spores.
yeah,
It's like a thick golden teacher, basically, in my opinion. But there's so many different tidal waves out there. Like your tidal wave and my tidal wave, we might have slightly different tidal waves,
yep,
but it's still tidal wave.
yeah. And then there's all these different variations on top of
Yes, yes,
of
definitely.
of the of the numbers too. Like there's tidal wave
Hmm.
4 and tidal wave 5, and but there's tidal
Yeah.
wave 4 maze head and tidal wave 5,
Yeah.
well, you know what I mean? So it's just so there's like definitely there's so many all like different isolations of every
Yep.
isolation, if that makes sense. Yeah. But um yeah, man, really cool stuff. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, and
Thank you for
talking
having
about
me.
this. And I think that you're like in a place that a lot of people aspire to be maybe one day, like in regards to just like building that
Oh,
never
thank
ending inventory and library. And yeah, I'm super impressed with your business. I mean, I talk about your business and I call it the perpetual motion machine because at this point you like, you rarely, if ever, do advertising. And I think
you.
that in itself is incredibly impressive because like I have good sales, but I also hustle my ass off in regards to marketing and advertising, to make that happen.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah.
just at this place now where you've just got it going, man. And
That's
don't get me wrong, it's a lot
funny.
to keep up with, and it's super impressive. But yeah, like it's in regards to yourself. If that doesn't tell people word of mouth means everything, I don't know what does. Because try to find a Mr. Mycelium advertisement out there. You're not really gonna.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's so
which I
funny,
think
man.
is super awesome, man. So, super excited for you and your success, and I'm super glad to have you as a partner in this whole SporeSwaps thing. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
really appreciate you coming on today. So, thank you so much, and I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next week.
See you.